He meets a cute girl at a matchmaking event. A small feeling of discomfort gradually turns into a great fear. The horror of obsession. Mad Woman. One night, as the cold winter air drifted through the city, Kazumi received an unexpected phone call from her friend Ren. "Kazumi, I'm in trouble. Can you give me your opinion?" Ren's voice had a different tone than usual. Kazumi answered immediately. "Okay, I'll be right there." 30 minutes later, Kazumi stood in front of Ren's house. Ren's face was extremely confused when he opened the door. "What's wrong?" Kazumi asked, and Ren sighed deeply. "About the matchmaking last week." Matchmaking is a meeting that takes place in a local restaurant or event room. Ren started to tell about the events of that day, about the conversation he had with a girl named Miku at the matchmaking and how they made a date later. From this point on, however, the story took a strange turn. The day before the date, Miku's LINE name suddenly changed to Seito Yuriko. Ren continued with a confused look on his face. "I got curious and asked her, and she said, 'Miku, who's that?'" Kazumi frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't know either. When we met at the matchmaking event, she said she was a nurse, but on our date, she said she worked at a cram school." Listening to Ren's story, Kazumi felt that something was strange. There was something about it that didn't seem like a simple misunderstanding or misconception. "Is there something else you're wondering about?" Ren hesitated for a moment before answering. "Shall I show you a picture?" The woman on his smartphone screen was definitely the same, but upon closer inspection, there were subtle differences in her appearance. "Is it the same person?" Kazumi couldn't help but ask. Ren shook his head. "I don't know, but the face and the voice are the same." Kazumi was silent. There was something like déjà vu in this situation. It was like the beginning of a detective story. But this was reality. "Did you ask Neko something?" Kazumi asked, remembering Neko who had introduced Ren and Miku at the matchmaking party. Ren continued, choosing his words carefully. "I asked Neko, and she said she knew about Miku. But she had never heard of Seito Yuriko." Kazumi leaned forward without thinking. "Wait a minute. What do you mean? It's a secret, right?" Ren held his head. This situation couldn't be explained by mere coincidence or misunderstanding. It felt like some important truth was being hidden. "Ren, we need to investigate a bit more," Kazumi said determinedly. "Let's get Neko to help us," Ren agreed. "Yes, please. I don't know what to do on my own." That night, Kazumi was deep in thought on her way home. An encounter at a matchmaking event, a sudden personality change, and an unusual appearance. Where will these mysteries lead? Kazumi is determined to find out the truth behind these strange events. What he doesn't know is that his quest will draw him and his friends into a maelstrom of unimaginable terror. Walking through the city at night, Kazumi feels a complex mixture of fear and curiosity. The hustle and bustle of the city passes by quietly, but in his heart, a sense of anticipation grows for the mystery yet to be solved. Tomorrow he will contact Neko, and he will get closer to the truth of this strange story. Kazumi has made himself a promise. Shivering in the cold night wind, Kazumi hurried to the place where he and Nico were supposed to meet as the streetlights cut through the winter darkness. His mind was filled with questions, one after the other. When he entered the cave where they were supposed to meet, Nico was already waiting in a window seat. She looked a little worried. "Sorry to make you wait, Nico." Kazumi took a deep breath and sat down. Nico smiled a little. "No, I just got here too." Kazumi hesitated for a moment, but then came straight to the point. "Ren told me. Do you remember meeting Miku at the matchmaking event?" Nico's expression clouded over. "Yes, of course." "But," she continued, choosing her words carefully. "It felt a little strange. Maybe it's because I haven't seen Miku for a while?" Kazumi frowned. "What do you mean?" Nico shrugged. "I don't know. I have the feeling that the atmosphere has changed." Kazumi asked every question like a detective. "What's her name, Seita Yuriko?" Nico shook her head. "I've never heard of her." "Who is she?" Kazumi told her the story she'd heard from Ren. Miki's change of name to Line, the strange incident with the woman who called herself Seita Yuriko, the contradiction between her profession and her personality. I could see Neko's face turning pale. "But that can't be. Miku is not the kind of girl who would do something like that." At that moment, the door to the cave opened and a woman entered. Kazumi and Nico both gasped at the same time. "Miku?" Nico murmured in a low voice. It was definitely Miku who had entered. However, her expression was extremely confused. "Nico-senpai, Kazuma-san." Miku stopped in front of them. "You called me out of the blue. What's going on?" Kazumi tried to explain the situation, but her words got stuck in her throat. She didn't know where to begin. Nico started to speak for he. "Miku, do you remember the matchmaking event the other day?" Miku tilted her head. "The matchmaking event? I didn't participate." For a moment, the air in the room seemed to freeze. Kazumi couldn't believe his ears. "What do you mean?" Kazumi blurted out. "But Ren said he met you." Miku looked confused. "I really don't know. I've been busy lately, so I don't have time to attend such events." Several possibilities swirled in Kazumi's head. Is someone pretending to be Miku? Is the collective memory faulty? Or maybe. "So, do you know Seita Yuriko?" Kazumi asked, clinging to her last hope. Miku's expression changed in an instant. The color drained from her face and fear rose in her eyes. "Why? That name?" Miku's voice trembled. Kazumi and Nico held their breath. Here, too, a secret was hidden. "Do you know her?" Nico asked softly. Miku took a deep breath. She was a former colleague. "We worked together until 6 months ago." She continued, choosing her words carefully. "But there was a little trouble." Kazumi repeated the question as if pulling at a string. "What kind of trouble?" Miku's expression clouded. "It was about my ex-boyfriend." She hesitated for a moment, then continued. "Yuriko's boyfriend fell in love with me." As Kazumi listened to her story, a terrible hypothesis began to take shape. Jealousy, hatred, madness. Intuitively, he sensed the presence of a terrible plan, born from a combination of these. "And Yuriko?" Kazumi asked fearfully. Miku shrugged. "She quit her job. I haven't seen her since." Several pieces of information swirled in Kazumi's head. The existence of Seidu Yuriko, Miku's impersonation, and her confused memories. All these things suggested something, but the big picture was still unclear. Could it be? Nico began anxiously. Yuriko impersonated Miku? The three looked at each other. The possibility was frightening and real. Kazumi made up her mind. "We have to find out the truth," he said and stood up. Ren could also be in danger. Miku and Nico agreed, and the three vowed to work together to uncover the truth. Late at night, Kazumi walked through the office district, organizing the events that had happened so far in his mind. The light from the street lamps distorted and stretched his shadow, creating an eerie atmosphere. Suddenly, his cell phone rang. Miku's name appeared on the screen. "Hello, Miku. What are you doing here so late at night?" "Kazumi." Miku's voice was shaking. "I'm scared. I feel like someone is watching me." Kazumi felt a shiver run down her spine. "Where are you now?" "I'm at home." "I'll be right there." "Don't open the door." Kazumi ran as fast as she could. When she arrived at Miku's apartment, she saw a figure at the end of the hallway. "Is that Yuriko Sato?" "Wait!" Kazumi shouted, but the woman ran down the stairs. Kazumi knocked on Miku's door and peeked and frightened. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Miku shook her head. "But look at this." She handed her a photo. There was a woman who looked very much like Miku. But on closer inspection, there were subtle differences. It was Yuriko Sato after the plastic surgery. "Where did you get this photo?" "It was under the front door." Kazumi suggested to call the police, but Miku hesitated. "But I need proof." At that moment, Kazumi's cell phone rang again. This time, it was from an unknown number. "Hello? Kazumi?" It was a woman's voice. "This is Seitu Yuriko." Kazumi held her breath. "Why?" "I want to tell you something now." Kazumi hesitated for a moment, but thought this was her chance to find out the truth. "Okay. Where shall we meet?" "The park in front of the station." "Please come alone." After hanging up, Kazumi explained the situation to Miku. "Don't go alone," Miku pleaded. "It's okay. I'll call the police." Kazumi tried to calm her down. On the way to the park, Kazumi's mind was filled with questions. Seitu Yuriko's past, her mental state, and the truth behind this crazy stalking. All these mysteries could be solved tonight. When he arrived at the park, he saw a woman sitting on a bench. Kazumi took a deep breath and approached her. "Are you Seitu Yuriko?" The woman raised her head slowly. Her face looked just like Miku's. However, the light of madness lurking in the depths of her eyes was clearly that of another person. "Thanks for coming, Kazumi." Her voice was soft but somehow eerie. "Please listen to my story. I'll tell you everything." Kazumi sat down nervously beside her. He had a premonition that the story he was about to hear would be the truth hidden behind unimaginable horror. Seitu Yuriko began to speak slowly but with emotion. "Miku and I worked as nurses in the same hospital. We got along well at first, but..." Her expression clouded over. "Miku seduced my fiance." Kazumi listened silently. "I was desperate. I wanted him back, but..." Miku was younger and cuter. Yuriko's voice trembled. "So I thought I could become Miku." "Plastic surgery?" Kazumi asked. Yuriko nodded. At first, it was just my face. But that wasn't enough. I tried to make my voice, my mannerisms, everything like Miku. But why did you go so far? I wanted to be Miku. I wanted to live her life. Yuriko's eyes darkened with madness. But then I realized that it wasn't possible. As long as the real Miku was around, Kazumi felt a shiver run down her spine. No way. Yes, I wanted to erase the real Miku, Yuriko said calmly. But it didn't work. Suddenly, they heard the sound of sirens. The police that Kazumi had called had arrived. We don't have much time, Yuriko said as she stood up. Kazumi, I have to ask you a favor. What? Tell someone my story. Tell them why I did this. When the police approached, Yuriko finally said, I just wanted to be Miku. And then she disappeared into the darkness. Standing there, Kazumi tried to sort out everything that had happened tonight. Say to Yuriko's madness, her obsession with Miku and her horrible transformation. The truth of all this was far beyond his imagination. After explaining the situation to the police, Kazumi called Miku. Miku, everything is okay now. He heard Miku sobbing on the other end of the phone. Kazumi felt the depth of the emotional pain this incident had caused her. As dawn approached, Kazumi returned home exhausted. But a feeling of unease remained in his heart. Did Seto Yuriko really disappear? And isn't this kind of madness lurking in everyone's heart? Kazumi felt that he would never be able to forget the events of that night. Kazumi stood in front of Seto Yuriko's apartment. With the permission of the police, he and Miku decided to check out Yuriko's apartment. But even before they opened the door, an eerie atmosphere was in the air. Are you sure you want to come in? Miku's voice was shaking. Kazumi took a deep breath and replied, Because I have to know the truth. They turned the key and opened the door, and darkness greeted them. When they turned on the light, the apartment seemed to have a normal interior. But something was different. There's something smells, Miku frowned. Kazumi agreed, like disinfectant. The two began to examine the room carefully. There was nothing unusual in the living room. But when they approached the door to the back room, Kazumi felt a shiver run down her spine. On the door was a sign that read, Miku's room. This is. Miku's face turned pale. Kazumi steeled herself and opened the door. At that moment, they both held their breath. The whole room was painted in dark colors, and the walls were plastered with photos. Most of them were pictures of Miku. However, upon closer inspection, there were several photos of Yuriko that were clearly taken before her plastic surgery. Is that me? Miku pointed to a photo with a shaking hand. It was undoubtedly a photo of Miku, but there was something strange about it. Kazumi examined the photo carefully. This is a composite photo. Yuriko's face on Miku's body. At the back of the room, 3 beds were lined up at equal intervals. It was an eerie, unearthly sight. Why 3? Kazumi muttered. Suddenly, Miku screamed. She pointed at the mirror, but the mirror was distorted. And what Miku saw was a strange mixture of Miku and Yuriko. Was she trying to become me? Miku's voice trembled. Kazumi continued to search the room. Medical records and plastic surgery documents came out of drawers. one after the other. Finally, she found a notebook. This is... Kazumi opened the notebook. It contained Yuriko's insane plan. Everything about Miku's daily life, habits, and relationships were detailed. She didn't just want to be you, Kazumi realized the terrible truth. She wanted to take your life completely. Miku fell to her knees when she heard these words. Why me? Kazumi couldn't answer. The madness and obsession that filled this room was beyond his comprehension. Suddenly, a faint sound came from the cabinet in the corner of the room. The two froze. Is someone there? Miku's voice trembled. Kazumi approached the cupboard carefully and slowly. He reached out and touched the doorknob. And then he opened it all at once. Inside the cabinet, there was a doll. But it was not an ordinary doll. The face was very similar to Miku's. And even her clothes were perfectly reproduced. This is... Kazumi was at a loss for words. There was a note tucked into the doll's chest. Kazumi took it and read it out loud. I will be the perfect Miku. At that moment, an alarm sounded throughout the apartment. It was a fire alarm. Let's get out of here. Kazumi grabbed Miku's hand and ran out of the room. The two of them ran down the stairs. Behind them, they heard the sound of flames. They escaped the building and turned around to see Yuriko's apartment in flames. She tried to put everything out. Kazumi muttered. Miku said, shaking. But why? At that moment, Kazumi's cell phone rang. Hello? Kazumi, did you find out the truth about me? Yuriko's voice came from the other end of the phone. Kazumi held her breath. This case wasn't over, and the biggest shock might still be waiting for her. Kazumi stood in front of the police station. A few hours ago, it had been announced that Sato, Yuriko, had been arrested on suspicion of arson and attempted murder. The cold night wind brushed against his cheeks, adding to his inner turmoil. He really did it, Kazumi muttered. His words seemed to be sucked into the darkness of the night. At that moment, Ren and Neko came running over. Their expressions were a mixture of surprise and fear. Kazumi, are you okay? Ren called breathlessly. Kazumi nodded slowly. Yeah, it still doesn't feel real. In the oppressive atmosphere, the three exchanged words. The lights of the police station cast long shadows over them. How did this happen? Neko's voice was shaking. There were tears in her eyes. The police investigation revealed the full extent of Yuriko's stalking. Her obsession with Miku was unimaginable. Yuriko's actions were more planned and cunning than Kazumi and the others knew. It seems she had taken over all of Miku's social media accounts. Kazumi revealed the information she had heard from the police, and she pretended to be Miku's friends and family to gather information. Ren frowned. It's like something out of a movie. A few days later, the court decided that Yuriko should be sent to a psychiatric hospital. The meaning of the 3 beds and the doll in Yuriko's room remains a mystery. Thank you for watching.